this is a special meeting. What's the title of it on? I don't have it in front of me. Could somebody help me on it?
Adult use cannabis package, rule package.
Okay, good enough. And will you please take the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Curran. Oh, she was just here. Okay, we'll come back to her. Commissioner Floyd.
Here.
Commissioner Harper. Here. Commissioner Melita.
Here.
Commissioner Raval.
Here.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Here.
And Commissioner
Steve?
Curran, it looks like she's back
Oh,
in.
there she is.
But we can't hear you, Commissioner Curran.
Well, she's here, so
Yes.
put her in. Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I think I'm going to turn it over to Madeline, but thank you. The governor signed today House Bill 3000, moving us forward. So we need to get our rules in place so we can start operations in Southern Oregon and with ODA on field testing and put in place the rules that would prevent minors from having access to the THC concentrated hemp items that are currently on the market. So I think I'm going to Madeline, correct, Laura Paul?
Correct.
Thanks, Dr. Mark. Good morning, Chair Rosenbaum and commissioners. For the record, my name is Madeline Kane, Policy Coordinator for the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. Before I read the rule package into the record, Stephen Crowley has a presentation to go into more detail about what this rule would do. So I will turn it over to Stephen.
Thanks. Good afternoon, Chair Rosenbaum, commissioners. For the record, my name is Stephen Crowley. I'm OLCC's Hemp and Processing Specialist, and I'm just going to run through kind of an overview of House Bill 3000 and what it does. As you've heard from Director Marks, there is a lot going on right now in the world of hemp, both locally here in Oregon as well as at a national scale. Many of these issues kind of came up during this current legislative session. And in response, the legislature used House Bill 3000 as the vehicle to address several of these issues. There's four main elements to the bill: regulating cannabis intoxicants, curbing illicit production of cannabis, implementing the 2018 Farm Bill, and establishing a task force. So in terms of regulating cannabis intoxicants, intoxicating products derived from hemp have really been a blind spot in cannabis regulation, and House Bill 3000 takes several steps to address that, including it defines terms like adult-use cannabis item, and effective immediately, it prohibits the sale of adult-use cannabis items to minors. Effective in January, it allows OLCC, in consultation with ODA and OHA, to set potency limits for THC and other cannabinoids in both hemp and marijuana items. It directs ODA to establish a tracking requirements for cannabinoid hemp items that are intended for human consumption, potentially including associating test results to the actual batch that was tested. And it allows ODA to expand the scope of their licensing program, potentially filling in the parts of the cannabinoid supply chain that have historically been invisible to regulators. Next slide. In terms of curbing illicit cannabis production, the bill gives additional tools that target both outright illicit production and the potential production of marijuana under the guise of a legal registered hemp grow. For illicit production, the bill makes it a misdemeanor crime to grow cannabis in excess of the amount allowed by state law at any location that's not licensed or registered by OLCC, ODA, or OHA. And allows that unlawfully produced cannabis to be destroyed as contraband.
Hey, Steve,
Yeah.
it says it doubles the funding for illegal marijuana market enforcement. What does that translate into in terms of employment, bodies, people?
You know, I'm not sure. I don't have the dollar figures in front of me, but I know that's used especially for funding some of the programs down in Southern Oregon for law enforcement.
Well, listen, all this is to address the Southern Oregon problem. I understand that and I agree with it completely. Is anybody on the call could give us an idea of, without, if you don't want to divulge the exact numbers, but give us an idea of what this means in terms of people?
If Rich Evans is not on the call, this is Steve Marks, Executive Director for the record. So we will be running approximately on the ODA gross for our part, approximately 17 in conjunction with ODA to make sure that we can carry out the testing in the field.
Steve,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're just not coming through. Is it just me or is it other people? You're breaking up.
Let me go ahead and mute all really quick. I think there might be somebody on the line that's not muted, but let me just mute all. And then if Stephen Crowley and Paul and Steve Marks, if you could unmute yourself again.
Is that any better now that you've done that, Laura? Can you hear me, Paul? All right, for the record, Steve Marks, Executive Director. Rich, if you're on the line, please feel free to hop in now, but I will start. We're going to be, so our job is to run about 7 teams in conjunction with ODA. For personnel, we're bringing additional personnel in the region. These will do the field testing on the registered grows for hemp under ODA. Our objective over the next course of the remainder of the summer and into the fall is to make sure that every field gets these tests done. So we have enough coverage with our folks. I can't give you the total numbers, Mr. Chairman, but I know, we're bringing in about 8 additional people into the region each week to carry out our part of that. ODA staff will be going up over time. Then the part that is also out there on the Class A misdemeanors is the part where Jackson and Josephine counties are working with their staffs to do the non-state cannabis grows that are not now a Class A misdemeanor. So those are the ones that are law enforcement related. They did get funding to hire additional people to do that work, but there's no additional staff in there for law enforcement in particular. But we've seen the benefits of the work, and this will make it much easier because of the Class A misdemeanor being general to cannabis for them to go forward and get warrants. So can't give you specific numbers, but that gives you a sense of operations.
Well, in your opinion, I hear you loud and clear. In your opinion, our existing field force is adequate enough to handle the problem?
The way we put it is we got enough to get the ball rolling. We'll see what resources, where we end up with pinch points in the operation and whether we need to bring in additional resources as we move forward. We do anticipate that we're going to be able to create quite a workflow out of this. But the next challenges will come after we start the program here over the next 2 weeks, and we'll have to match them. So I'm not going to say that we can get everything done, but we have a plan and the numbers to do all of the testing of all our part of the role throughout this growth cycle.
Okay. I've got my CEO hat on now, and all I'm saying to you is that with all of the problems we've had and trying to correct this, we need enough manpower to make sure it's done.
And if we need, the agencies need additional people power, we're going to be in coordination with both state police and with the governor's office to try to bring the resources to bear to get at the problem. I think that's our direction from the legislature and the governor. So they'll be monitoring us closely with your exact concern, Mr. Chairman. And I have that concern as well, but we got to start and see what we can get through here.
I don't want to belabor this. I just want one other point. Steve, are you going to be in a position to determine whether or not more manpower is needed, or who determines that?
We won't determine, we'll be a part of determining that along with ODA and along with our partners in local law enforcement. So we'll be reporting, much like we did with the COVID reports, we'll be reporting weekly on operations and rolling this up each week as to where we are, as to how much work we're accomplishing and what the pitfalls might be along the way, or problems where we need resources to solve.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Thank you. And next slide, Laura. So for the other side of it, for the production of marijuana at ODA licensed hemp grows, like you were just talking about, the bill directs OLCC to establish a methodology for presumptively distinguishing between hemp and marijuana. And if a hemp grower is producing marijuana, then ODA can order that crop destroyed. It also allows ODA to enter into an interagency agreement with OLCC for our staff to inspect hemp crops, and allows law enforcement to accompany ODA and OLCC to the grows for the purposes of providing protection to agency staff. The bill also provides that the governor may order the Oregon National Guard to assist ODA in hemp enforcement activities. And it gives ODA some additional tools to deal with their licensees who plant without first obtaining a license or who grow a crop that exceeds 10% total THC. Next slide. For ODA, House Bill 3000 also takes the critical step of bringing Oregon's hemp program up to speed with federal law. Up to this point, Oregon has continued to operate under the pilot program for industrial hemp that was created by the 2014 Farm Bill. This bill gives ODA the additional authority that it needs, particularly around the ability to conduct nationwide criminal record checks on their applicants in order to have their Oregon State Hemp Plan approved under the 2018 Farm Bill. Next slide. And then the last key piece of the bill is establishing a task force to continue to look at cannabis issues in the years to come. And this bipartisan bicameral task force will consider and make recommendations for long-term and structural concerns around Oregon's regulation of cannabis. Next slide. So those were all the topics that House Bill 3000 tackled. And now to implement some parts of the bill, OLCC needs to take action. And there's specifically two sections of the bill where the agency needs to act swiftly and adopt rules. One is the definition of adult-use cannabis items. House Bill 3000 prohibits the sale of adult-use cannabis items to anyone under 21 years of age, but it gives OLCC the responsibility for setting that threshold where a cannabinoid hemp item is considered to be adult use, so that businesses can't sell intoxicating hemp products to kids. The other is the methodology for presumptively distinguishing between hemp and marijuana in the field. And this will allow staff to much more quickly screen a hemp grow to determine whether the grower is producing marijuana. Next slide. And then the last critical piece for implementation is that Oregon's regulatory agencies work together. So this means, working with ODA to develop the SOPs for the enforcement and field work, working with ODA, BOLI, OSHA, water resources, code enforcement, counties, and others to gather information about complaints received about hemp grows and other cannabis grows. It includes purchasing the field testing units to allow our regulatory specialists to go out and determine if a plant is marijuana or hemp during inspections of the registered grows, and adjusting staffing statewide, as Steve mentioned, to allow for more personnel in the Southern Oregon region. There are always new challenges cropping up in cannabis regulation, and this year the legislature has really given the state a robust set of tools to address these latest challenges. OLCC staff are ready to step up and do that work in coordination with our partners throughout the state. Thank you, and I'd be happy to do my best to answer any questions.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? None? Okay, I got one or two, but I'll be quick. On the field testing, will you please explain the mechanism you're going to use to determine quickly the difference between hemp and marijuana?
Yeah, so the agency is getting some field testing units that can test for THC and CBD content in the field. And the way that the Department of Agriculture has historically had to do it is go through meticulously through an entire field and make sure to take a representative sample from all the plants and combine that all together and test that. What the presumptive testing allows is testing fewer samples, taking a composite sample from a few different areas around the hemp grow. And if more than 50% of those, or 50% or more of those composite samples come back at 5% THC or more for a mature plant, then it can be presumed to be marijuana. Because we don't want to get a hemp grower who, maybe we pick the wrong plants and their average is fine, but the particular plants that we test are 1 or 2% THC. That's not the goal. The goal is at that 5% level, it's pretty clearly that cannabis is marijuana. And so rather than having to go through and meticulously sample and composite an entire field, just spot checking some plants for really high THC levels is kind of the goal of that presumptive testing.
So what you're saying, Steve, is that the procedure is not new. All you're going to do is take a fewer samples, but the procedure is well established, correct?
I mean, we've worked with ODA and DOJ on working through the particulars and the compositing process of taking at least several plants in composite testing. That was something that ODA wanted to make sure that we're getting a good sample, even with the reduced numbers of samples that are being taken.
Okay. And the task force, are we going to have a spot on the task force?
Yes, sir. For the record, Steve Marks, Executive Director, yes.
Okay. I'm done with you.
I just want to add to Steve's deal. We're really not trying to define what hemp is here. We're really trying to spot check and look, and we have to take a minimum amount of samples to figure out what is commercial marijuana. This is to move quickly through to figure out if it's, 5% and above gets to, when you get 5-10% particularly is commercially, and most of the hits on the illegal plants down there have been much higher in their marijuana content than 5%. So we're not trying to carve the line between hemp and marijuana. We're really looking for commercially profitable marijuana being in those fields.
Yeah, but Steve, look at it. We all know what we're trying to accomplish. We're giving you the tools to try to do it. My point, I just want to say again, is that it's an enormous task. It's very difficult. It's maybe almost impossible to get to where you want to go with it. But as long as we attempt to give you the tools, don't undersell it. I mean, if you're going to do this, you got to do it full blast. I mean, and we want to give you the tools to do it. That's my point. I don't want you to fail on this.
Chair Rosenbaum?
Yes, Commissioner.
Just so you're aware, you may not be aware, is that this will also separate the legitimate hemp growers from the ones that are not legitimate, because if they're a legitimate hemp grower, they will want insurance, crop insurance from the USDA. If the numbers read higher than what we're saying here, they will not be allowed to get crop insurance, and they'll know that, and they have no intention. So this is also being looked at by the USDA, and it's already in place.
Yeah, I fully am cognizant of that. That was not my point on it, but I agree with you. I mean, this thing is all right. I said enough.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Commissioner
Harper, I make a motion in regards to the Adult-Use Cannabis Package. I move to temporarily adopt OAR 845-026-0100, 845-026-0300, and 845-026-4100. Laura, has the effective date changed? You know the date?
I'm going to let Madeline give you a little intel there.
The effective date has changed. It's effective as of today, but would you mind if I read the rule into the record?
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
No problem. Were there any other questions before I move on? Great. Okay, so today we have the adult use cannabis temporary and initial action for your consideration. Again, my name is Madeline Kane, policy coordinator for the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. During the 2021 Oregon legislative session, the Oregon legislature passed House Bill 3000. In part, the bill requires the OLCC to adopt rules which define adult use cannabis items, establish concentration limits for THC and hemp items that are sold to minors, and determine protocols for field testing cannabis plants at hemp premises registered with the Oregon Department of Agriculture. This package necessitated the designation of a new division, as some of the products and practices described in these rules lie outside the recreational marijuana system. The 3 rules in this package set the definitions for the division, concentration limits for adult use cannabis items, and presumptive field testing requirements. If approved, these rules will remain temporary until January 1st, 2022, when the other required legislative changes go into effect.
Chair Rosenbaum, Commissioner Harper, I move to amend the start of the motion, but so I'll state it again in regards to the adult use cannabis package. I move to temporarily adopt OAR 845-026-0100, 845-026-0300, and 845-026-4100, effective July 19th, 2021 to December 31st, 2021, to initiate rulemaking on this matter and to hold a rulemaking hearing at staff's discretion.
Okay, Commissioner Curran.
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd.
Yes.
Commissioner Harper.
Yes.
Commissioner Molinas.
Yes.
Commissioner Ravel.
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Is there any other comments before we leave? Other than we all love Commissioner Ravel's shirt.
If I might, for the record, Steve Marks, Executive Director. We will be in the region this week. I just want you to know we're planning on starting operations really formally on Wednesday. We've already initiated some activity related to this. We'll be briefing public officials hopefully on Wednesday, talking as the Community Marijuana Advisory Group on our actions going forward. But this is the start. This bill passed rapidly to address this problem, both ODA, OLCC, and with the governor's commitment, and with the hardest working commission in the state of Oregon's rapid action. We're following up and getting the job done as we can. And, you know, you're right on the barriers and resources. We may confront those things along the way, but we are hitting the road hard and quick the day the governor signed the bill. So thank you.
Steve, you have a command from me. You stay behind the offices when you go in there. I don't want you up front.
Mr. Chairman, now that you said that, I do have to say we have an extensive safety plan. Thank goodness we have Rich Evans on staff to put that together. We just had some discussions today with some of our union leadership. Rich has been briefing the staff on that work down there. I feel, you know, there are obviously present concerns, but I feel very, very good about the plans in place from a public safety point of view, and those for our employees down there, who we certainly have a lot of folks that are very interested in working on this problem down south from our inspectors, and very glad of that for their work to be able to do it. Thank you.
Well, just keep Commissioner Ravel in mind. If things get rough, we take him in there. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you all.